Hello and welcome back. We have been dealing with the identity theory and functionalism of the materialists tradition. To begin with, we would further discuss today and see and have a comparative analysis between Smart's identity theory and Hilary Putnam's functionalism. We have seen in our previous lectures that Smart argues that mental states are identical to brain states, emphasizing a one-to-one correspondence between the mental and the physical, and rejecting the idea that mental states can be realized in different kinds of physical systems, and there is no multiple realizability. Hilary Putnam offers a more flexible functionalist theory, proposing that mental states are defined by their functional roles, that is, what they do, rather than by their physical substrate, and supports the idea that mental states can be realized by different physical systems, thus multiple realizability. This distinction between identity theory and functionalism represents a significant divide in the philosophy of mind regarding how we understand the relationship between mental phenomena and physical processes. Despite their significant differences, Smart and Putnam share some important similarities in their philosophical approaches, particularly regarding philosophy of mind. Here are the key areas where their views converge. Both Smart and Putnam share a basic commitment to materialism or physicalism, the view that the mind is fundamentally a part of the physical world and that mental phenomena should be explainable in terms of physical processes. Smart advocates for type identity theory, which holds that mental states are identical to specific brain states. Putnam, although rejects the strict identity between mental and brain states, his functionalism is also grounded in physicalism, as mental states are seen as functions of physical systems. The other commonality between Putnam and Smart is that both the philosophers reject Cartesian dualism, the view that the mind and the body are separate, non-physical substances. Smart argues that mental states are just brain processes, making dualism unnecessary. Putnam also rejects dualism, as functionalism assumes that mental states can be realized by physical processes without invoking a separate non-physical realm. Both Smart and Putnam are committed to naturalism, and this is the third convergence or similarity between the two seemingly different philosophers, meaning that they believe that the mind can be understood through the methods of science, particularly neuroscience and cognitive science. Smart suggests that as neuroscience advances, we will find exact brain states that correspond to mental states. Putnam states that though functionalism allows for multiple realizability, Putnam believes that mental states arise from physical systems that can be studied scientifically. Both the philosophers value empirical evidence and believe that the study of the mind should be informed by advances in sciences, especially psychology, neuroscience, and computer science. This is the fourth similarity between the identity theorist Smart and the functionalist theory Putnam. Smart emphasizes that mental states can be identified with brain states as science uncovers more about brain processes. Putnam uses insights from computer science, example the Turing machines, to model how mental states might be realized in different physical systems. Both Smart and Putnam critiques behaviorism, the view that mental states are nothing more than behaviors or dispositions to behave in certain ways. Smart argues that mental states are brain states, not mere behaviors. Putnam, in his paper The Nature of Mental States, criticizes behaviorism, for ignoring the internal states that mediate between inputs and outputs, suggesting that mental states are more than just observable behaviors. Both philosophers attempt to explain mental states in a way that respects their physical underpinnings, even if they do so in different ways. Smart seeks to reduce mental states to physical brain states. Putnam, on the other hand, defines mental states by their functional roles in a system which can still be explained in physical terms. Both Smart and Putnam sought to provide alternatives to dualism and behaviorism by advancing materialist explanations of the mind. Smart, through his identity theory, tried to show that mental processes are not separate from physical ones, but are actually brain processes. Putnam, through functionalism, offered a way to understand the mind in terms of its functions within a system, which can be described physically even if they are not tied to one specific physical realization. Both Smart and Putnam have influenced the development of cognitive science and artificial intelligence through their theories. Smart's identity theory paved the way for understanding the mind-brain relationship in terms of neuroscience. Putnam's functionalism influenced the development of cognitive models and ideas about artificial intelligence, as it suggested that mental states could exist in machines as long as they fulfilled the appropriate functional roles. While their views on reduction differ, both philosophers are interested in explaining how mental phenomena relate to physical systems. Smart attempts a strict reduction of mental states to brain states. Putnam, while not a reductionist in the strict sense, aims to explain mental states through their functional roles, which can be described in physical terms. Although Smart and Putnam differ significantly in their specific theories, identity versus functionalism, they do share many philosophical commitments, including a rejection of dualism, a materialist or physicalist worldview, a respect for scientific inquiry into the mind, and a rejection of behaviorism. Both see the mind as something that can be understood in terms of physical processes, even though they conceptualize the relationship between the mental and the physical in different ways. Here are some philosophers who, like Smart and Putnam, have made significant contributions to philosophy of mind, particularly regarding materialist and physicalist approaches to mental states. David Armstrong. Armstrong is a prominent defender of type identity theory, much like Smart. He argued that mental states are nothing more than physical brain states. Armstrong's materialism emphasizes that everything, including the mind, is fundamentally part of the physical world. Armstrong held that mental states are the realization of particular neural states specifically tied to the brain's physical structure. He aimed to provide a significant framework to support his view, paralleling Smart's approach to mind-brain identity. Donald Davidson. The next in line is definitely Davidson, who is known for his theory of anomalous monism, which holds that mental events are identical to physical events, but there are no strict psychophysical laws connecting them, hence the term anomalous. This makes Davidson's view a type of non-reductive physicalism. Davidson argued that while mental states are physical, they cannot be reduced to physical descriptions because of the normative and interpretive nature of the mental. He maintained that mental and physical events are part of a unified world, but that mental phenomena require different kinds of explanation than purely physical ones. Jerry Fodor. Fodor is closely associated with functionalism, much like Putnam. He is a key figure in philosophy of cognitive science and a defender of the computational theory of mind. Fodor proposed that mental states are functional states which are realized by physical systems like the brain, but can in principle be realized in other systems like computers or robots. He developed the concept of modularity of mind, suggesting that different cognitive processes are organized into specialized domain-specific systems. Dennett. Dennett is a leading figure in materialist philosophy and a strong advocate of functionalism and evolutionary biology in understanding consciousness. He is known for his critique of traditional theories of mind and his emphasis on a scientific approach to understanding mental phenomena. Dennett's theory of consciousness is often referred to as a kind of eliminative materialism. He believes that many common sense ideas about mental states, such as beliefs and desires, may eventually be replaced by more accurate scientific descriptions of brain functions. In Consciousness Explained, he rejects dualistic and mystical approaches to consciousness. Patricia Churchland. Patricia Churchland is a key figure in neurophilosophy, which focuses on the relationship between neuroscience and the philosophy of mind. She advocates for eliminative materialism, the view that some concepts we use to describe mental states may be incorrect and will be replaced by neuroscientific concepts. Churchland argues that a deep understanding of the brain will eventually explain mental phenomena. She believes that as neuroscience advances, it will eliminate the need for many mentalistic concepts in favor of more accurate descriptions of brain processes. Paul Churchland. Along with his wife Patricia Churchland, Paul Churchland is a strong proponent of eliminative materialism. He argues that our folk psychology, common sense understanding of the mind, will be replaced by neuroscientific descriptions as we learn more about the brain. Paul Churchland emphasizes that current psychological terms like belief and desire are inadequate for describing the actual functioning of the brain, and that future scientific advances will provide better concepts. Thomas Nagel. While not a materialist in the same sense as Smart or Putnam, Nagel's work in philosophy of mind is essential, particularly his critique of physicalism. In his famous essay, What It Is Like to Be a Bat, Nagel argues that subjective experiences or qualia cannot be fully explained by physicalist theories. Nagel's focus is on the subjective character of experience, arguing that physicalist accounts of the mind cannot explain what it is like to have subjective experiences. His views contrast with materialists like Smart and Putnam, but his critiques have influenced discussions about the limitations of materialism. Saul Klee. Kripke, in his Naming and Necessity lectures, offers a significant challenge to identity theory by questioning the relationship between mental states and brain states. He introduces the notion of rigid designators, suggesting that mental and physical states refer to different aspects of the world in ways that cannot be simply equated. Kripke's argument against materialism involved the claim that mental states cannot be reduced to physical states because they have different modal properties. His critique of the identity theory has had a lasting impact on debates about the mind-body problem. John Searle. Searle is a critic of both strong AI and eliminative materialism. He advocates for biological naturalism, which holds that mental states are real. Biological phenomena produced by the brain, though not reducible to purely functional or computational descriptions. Searle's famous Chinese room argument is a critique of functionalism and AI. He argues that simply processing symbols, as computers do, does not result in understanding or consciousness, thus opening views like Putnam's functionalism. Gallen Sten. Strawson is known for his defense of panpsychism, the view that consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe, present even in the smallest forms of matter. While these contrasts with typical materialism, he critiques reductive materialism for its inability to explain subjective experience. Strawson argues that physicalism, when properly understood, implies that consciousness is everywhere. Panpsychism, challenging the traditional materialist view that sees consciousness as emerging from non-conscious physical processes. So, we see that besides Smart and Putnam, there have been a lot of philosophers who have gone beyond the materialist theorists, both the materialists and the non-materialists. However, Smart and Putnam's focus on materialism and physicalism in explaining the mind has been echoed by each of these philosophers, whether he was Armstrong or Fodor's functionalism, Dennett's consciousness and evolutionary approach, or Churchland's eliminative materialism. Critiques of strict materialism comes from figures like Nagel vis-a-vis his subjective experience, Kripke's model arguments, while philosophers like Searle and Strawson engage with broader concepts of mind, challenging aspects of both identity theory and functionalism. At this juncture, we would now like to revisit the ongoing debate of philosophy of mind, which is the subjective versus objective. And to begin with, we begin with Thomas Nagel. Philosophy of mind, as we know by now, revolves around understanding the nature of mental phenomena, consciousness, and the relationship between the mind and body. In this context, different theories approach the nature of mind, its states and contents. Below is an elucidation of the relevant concepts. Materialistic theory of mind versus the non-materialistic theories of mind. Materialistic theory of mind. Physicalism or materialism asserts that everything about the mind can be explained by physical processes and brain activity. Mental states are reducible to brain states, and consciousness is a result of neural interactions. Two key forms of materialism are identity theory. Mental states are identical to physical brain states. For example, the sensation of pain is nothing but the firing of certain neurons. Functionalism is the second materialistic theory, which states that mental states are identified by their function rather than their internal composition. For example, a mental state like belief is defined by how it interacts with other mental states, sensory inputs, and behavior. On the non-materialistic theories of mind, we have dualism, which we all know by now was pioneered by René Descartes. Dualism posits that the mind and body are distinct substances, the mental or the non-physical and the physical or the material coexist but interact in some way. Under dualism, we have substance dualism and property dualism. Substance dualism states that the mind exists as a non-physical entity distinct from the brain. Property dualism, while the brain is physical, it gives rise to non-physical properties like consciousness that cannot be reduced to purely material terms. Idealism. Idealism, which is again a non-materialistic theory of mind, argues that mind and its contents are the only reality and the physical world is either illusory or dependent on mental perception. Panpsychism is the third non-materialistic theory of mind that claims that consciousness is a fundamental and ubiquitous aspect of the universe, even at the level of fundamental particles. We will now further, before we discuss our discussion ahead, would like to talk about the various states of mind. To begin with, the mental states, we will try to explore about the part which is called as the phenomenal mental states. The phenomenal mental states are states of subjective, qualitative experience, often referred to as qualia, which is the felt quality of experience. For example, the redness of seeing a red apple, the feeling of pain, or the taste of sweetness. Phenomenal states are about what it is like to experience something. Second, we have the intentional mental states. The intentional mental states have intentionality, meaning they are about or directed at something external to the mind. Example, beliefs, desires, and thoughts. For instance, the belief that the sky is blue is about a state of the world, which is the blueness of the sky. Intentionality refers to the aboutness or representational aspect of the presented mental states. The third is the weak intentional mental states. The weak intentional mental states are those that are a mixture of both intentional and phenomenal states. The weak intentional states are the in-between states of the two strong positions. For example, if I see a rainbow, as much as I may have the mental content directed towards the outside world, which is the rainbow, I can also have an intrinsic subjective feel called qualia when I see the rainbow. Weak anti-intentional mental states is the fourth type of mental state. This state those that are a mixture of both anti-intentional and anti-phenomenal. Now we know that the weak anti-intentional mental states only has a logical possibility. There is no such connection in the actual world. Further, now that we have understood the various types of mental states, the phenomenal states, the intentional states, the weak intentional states, and the weak anti-intentional states, and out of these four, the last one, which was the weak anti-intentional state, has no as such practical instances. It is only a logical possibility. We will now go ahead and further discuss about the other states of mind. Our second part thus is the objective versus the subjective states in philosophy of mind. Objective mental states refer to those states that can in principle be observed and measured externally by others. Materialistic theories often favor objective states as they involve observable brain activity, behavioral responses, and functional roles. Objective states are also tied to cognitive and intentional mental states, where content can be represented explicitly. We will further be talking about the subjective states vis-a-vis the objective states, and also check in this background how the various forms of consciousness crops up. Thank you so much.